All right, welcome to today's verdict. I'm your host and trial attorney, David Lesch. We have three very interesting and distinct topics today. First, starting out with childcare and what is needed in the city to make sure that young parents have an ability to have somebody look at their children so that they can enter back into the workforce. Next up, we're talking about the selling of the Washington Commanders. Dan Snyder, the obstacles. I find it a very interesting topic. I love all things sports. So this was great to get into with our sports legal expert. And finally, we talked about the outdoor restaurants. Should they still be existing? There's rats and there's noise. There's also failure to make way for pedestrians. So much to debate on the topic. We have three different guests who are going to be joining us discussing all of these three topics. So stay with us. Today's verdict starts right now. Okay, welcome back to today's verdict. I'm your host and trial attorney, David Lesch. We have with us today Councilmember Julie Menin to talk all things child care. Councilmember, thanks for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me. Great to be with you.
Oh, it's our pleasure. So way back when we had our child, my wife is a dentist. She had to go back to work. It was very difficult. It's tough to find child care, and we had the means to do so. But that's not always the case for many people in this city. Am I correct? It's not so easy to get somebody to help you take care of your child. And it's the choice between either going back to work or staying home and taking care of the child. Am I correct?
Well, that's exactly right. I'm a mother of four, and so I can personally attest to this. Child care is a problem across New York City. Right now, on average, it is costing parents over $18,000 a year for childcare. And that's if you can even find childcare in your neighborhood, because we've got childcare deserts all over the city of New York. Sadly, we saw that last year, over 375,000 parents left the workforce or downsized their career because of lack of affordable, accessible childcare.
Well, what age are we talking about in terms of the child? Are we talking about 0 to 3, 1 to 4? Where would you put it?
0 to 3 is where the real problem exists, because that is where the city does not have a lot of programs and resources to help parents. We, of course, have 3K and pre-K, but if you're the parent of a 0 to 3-year-old, there are very, very few options. Now, with that said, childcare is a challenge even after age 3, of course, but where we're really trying to first and foremost focus our activities are on that 0 to 3 timeframe.
So let's tell the viewers how you went about, very successfully, I might add, getting those 5 bills signed by the mayor. Talk to us a little bit about it.
So I started working on this on day one, on January 1st. I put in legislative requests for a universal child care package and started meeting with advocates and providers and parents all across the city to work on these bills. These 5 bills get us to universal child care. Basically, what they do is they create a permanent advisory board that is tasked with implementing universal child care. And the other bills focus on the supply issue, because right now we've lost over 1,400 child care providers, which is actually what's created these child care deserts all around the city.
Why do you think we've lost these providers?
So we've lost them because they're struggling, and they're struggling because the City Department of Education oftentimes takes years to pay providers. There's a whole issue around late payment. There's also an issue around criminal background checks because, and let me be clear, I'm in no way saying we should not be doing the criminal background checks. Of course, you want to make sure that the people who are caring for your children have passed these checks, but it's taking the Department of Education sometimes up to a year to do a routine background check. So that delays the opening of new childcare facilities or even the operating of the existing ones. So there are all sorts of problems within the system. And so 2 of my bills are meant to address that. One bill provides grants to struggling providers so that we're helping to support them and make sure that more of them do not close. And another grant encourages the opening of new childcare centers because it basically plugs into a state tax incentive of up to $225,000 to open up new childcare centers. So this is going to allow us to build childcare centers in these childcare deserts all around the city. And then I have two other bills that provide an electronic database of every single childcare provider.
Yeah, I'm interested in that. That seems to be a creation of like a Marshall Plan for Mom's Task Force. And basically you're combining the department, the New York City Department of Health and mental hygiene with the City Department of Information Technology and Telecommunications, right?
Well, I want to just clarify that actually is not by my bill. The Marshall Plan for Moms is my colleague, Councilmember Jennifer Gutierrez's bill, and her bill is basically a task force to focus on issues that are affecting working mothers. So that bill that you're talking about is her bill, and it's a part of the whole universal child care package, but it's a different bill.
It's a different bill. Okay, because I know getting the word out to the new mothers to find out where the locations are and how you can sign up, that's a big deal, because it's one thing just to get the new centers built and have staffing. It's another thing trying to get a young mother or parent to be able to understand where to navigate and where to find the centers. Am I correct?
Yeah, this is so true. So I do have two other bills in the package that do address that. One of my bills provides the first ever fully comprehensive electronic database of every single childcare provider in the city. What languages are spoken? Are they operated out of someone's home, or is it a freestanding facility? What are the hours of operation? What services are provided? And then I have another bill that creates a subsidy portal so that parents and caregivers can quickly assess what type of federal, state, and city subsidies they qualify for. Because you're exactly right, that has been one of the problems. It's a complete bureaucratic maze, and it's so confusing for parents and caregivers to find out, can they even qualify for these subsidies? If so, how do they do so? And the portal will have all the forms necessary to apply for those relevant subsidies.
It seems fairly clear cut, but there must be pushback somewhere. Where are you getting the resistance from?
Well, we actually didn't have resistance. I had over 40 co-sponsors to my universal childcare bill. And so it had tremendous support. The mayor was very supportive. The administration testified in favor of it. The speaker has been incredibly supportive. And the mayor signed my package and the whole 7-bill package just a couple of weeks ago.
Well, congratulations. What's next? What's the first thing that you go and do now that you successfully have the bill signed? What's the first thing that you do?
So it's not enough just to get the bills done, in my opinion. And I say this as someone who served as commissioner of several different city agencies. It's also about the implementation. We have to hold the administration's feet to the fire to make sure that they're implementing all the different aspects of these bills, because we have to make sure that this happens. So I have been meeting with the administration, have a really strong, productive working relationship with them that's focused on this package. And so meeting with them on a very routine basis to make sure that the rollout happens in a smooth and expeditious fashion.
I mean, we're past the elections now. Does it seem like the city is still moving in that direction of, just listen, we've had a guest on earlier today talking about raising minimum wage. We're trying to make it an easier city for those who are really under a lot of pressure, including young families. Do you still feel that the city is moving in that direction still in terms of providing access and making it easier for young families in this city?
It has to be one of our number one priorities. We right now have a city that is unaffordable for the vast majority of families. And so childcare is an enormous component of what families are paying for that is causing this rise in their cost of living. So by providing universal childcare, and I do want to say that this package of bills positions New York City as the first city in the country to implement universal childcare, it's so tremendously exciting. And that's exactly the kind of work that we have to be doing. It's why I ran for council. When I was campaigning for city council, I campaigned on this issue of universal childcare. We need to be providing this for our families. And to be clear, this also covers undocumented families, because it's not universal childcare if it's not covering undocumented families as well. So wanted to make sure to mention that.
It's a great win for you, and I think for all of New York. That's my own personal opinion. I want to thank you very much for coming on, and hopefully you can come back maybe in the next couple of months and tell us what else you're working on.
Thank you so much. I would love that, and thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure. All right, stay with us. Today's verdict has so much more right after this. All right, welcome back to today's verdict. I'm your host and trial attorney, David Lesch. We're going to be talking today about the Washington Commanders and possible sale of the team. And we have with us today Jodi Balsam, professor at Brooklyn Law School, a sports legal expert, and a former NFL counsel. Jodi, thanks for being here today.
Great to be with you.
Yeah, I find this fascinating. Dan Snyder, has really been in the news for at least 15 to 20 years, I think, in terms of whether or not he's a good owner, a bad owner. Those in Washington, many have been asking him to sell the team for years, yet he somehow manages not to have to do this. He talks to other owners. He has, potential issues that he could, put out in the public that they don't want out there. Tell me, why now? Why does it look like Dan Snyder might finally have to sell the team?
Well, the culmination of the investigations into his workplace over the last few years have developed a record of toxicity, harassment. He's also mishandled some of the business challenges of the team, including its stadium situation, its naming situation. At this point, he's considered to be unhelpful to the league's image, unhelpful to the team's success. There's such active public sentiment against him. And now, most recently, you may have read that the DC Attorney General has lodged a lawsuit against him and the team for violations of consumer protection statutes. So we are sort of at a pressure point right now where he's doing nobody affiliated with the sport any good by continuing to own the team. And there are other potential bidders ready and willing to lay down their $5 to $7 billion.
With respect to the potential for a new stadium, and I know that never transitioned. Now they don't want to give him any money for any kind of new stadium. What was the issue? That he didn't want to spend his own money, that he didn't want to invest back into the team? Where was the criticism there?
Well, the issue is one that arises in many stadium development projects around this league and other leagues, which is what justifies the public subsidy. And with a team in a league as wealthy as the NFL, why shouldn't the owners front the money? There is some public justification in supporting that project through infrastructure, but to actually levy bonds and supply the billions it takes to now create a new stadium is something that's meeting a lot of public resistance around professional sports, although the counterexample is Buffalo and the promise of its state and municipality to invest heavily in building it a new stadium.
For years, he was pressured to change the name of the team from the Redskins to the Commanders or to something else. And it was no. And then finally, yes. And it's almost the same thing here. It's like, no, I won't sell the team. I have dirt on other owners. I can put that out there. Don't make me do that. And finally, I guess we're at a pressure point, and it looks like it may possibly happen. But who's interested, I guess, is what I want to know. Who's up there for a possible sale?
Well, I think most of the press so far has focused on Jeff Bezos, the Amazon founder, who has emerged as the likeliest candidate to purchase the franchise. There are members of the former minority ownership group who are now also interested. So a couple of years ago, you may have read that there was a minority ownership group in the Washington Commanders, owned 40% of the team, and were involved in a series of disputes over the team and how it was managed and operated. And under the ownership agreement, Dan Snyder was entitled to buy them out, and he did. So that former group of owners that had a 40% stake in the team up until 2020 have now come back, some of them, and they are also seeking to make a bid. We also have the Fenway Sports Group as a possible contender. So the Fenway Sports Group already owns the Boston Red Sox, the Pittsburgh Penguins. I think they also own a NASCAR team, and they owned the English Premier League, that's the English Soccer League, Liverpool Football Club, they are expected to sell Liverpool for as much as $5 billion. They want out of the English Premier League. The Fenway Sports Group, once they consummate that sale, will have $5 billion to spend. And I could see them pivoting to purchase an NFL team. I'm not sure who else might be in there, but those are the top three candidates that I could think of.
It's interesting that there was a time where they didn't want anybody who owned another professional team to come in and buy an NFL team, but those days are gone. Let me ask you a little bit about what would be needed. I know that the principal owner has to have about 30% of a stake in the team. Also, 3/4 of the league owners have to approve this. Is that how it works?
Yes. So for all major league business decisions, including things like transfers of ownership, the league requires a supermajority vote. 3/4 or 24 out of the 32 owners have to approve the transaction.
That's, that seems like it could be a tough sell here because, I mean, I'm sure he's got a couple of friends in there. 3/4 is a lot. I mean, I know.
Well, the way it works is that comes to a vote only after the selling owner has agreed to a transaction. So the way it works is that you want to put your team up for sale, you solicit bids, you get advice, as Stan Snyder is from Bank of America. You set a term sheet. The league then does due diligence, right? So the driver of the sale is the selling owner. Once they present the transaction to the league conducts intensive due diligence on the prospective new owners, whether they're buying a majority or a minority share. They do financial capacity and individual character, background checks. Once the owner is fully vetted, the prospective owner is fully vetted, that package comes to the 32 owners for a vote. So they're voting after the bona fides of the prospective owner are fully established, and they're satisfied that they're going to be welcoming into their club somebody who will be a good citizen, a good member. Looking into your crystal ball, does it look like this is going to happen? Is it a possibility within the next 6 months to a year? What if the Commanders go on a run? It could always happen, make the playoffs. What are your thoughts? Well, I think the more successful the team is, the happier everyone will be, whether you're the selling owner or the incoming owner. I don't know that it'll have much influence on whether the sale happens or not. That's going to be a function of the league's general distaste for Dan Snyder continuing as a partner and his willingness to finally bow out. By the way, ever since the revelations about the toxic workplace at the Washington Redskins, Dan Snyder has had to take a back seat and has not been allowed to formally run the team. Team leadership is now in the hands of his wife, Tanya Snyder, and the suspension of him from fully engaging with his team is indefinite. I'm not sure there's much glory or psychic reward anymore for Dan Snyder in owning the team. So whatever ego drives people to want to own NFL teams, Dan Snyder's ego has taken such a big hit here. It may just not be worth it. They always say, it's the billionaires just want, you always get a bigger boat, but there's only so many teams out there to be able to buy. So it's tough to part with them. Listen, Jodi, I want to thank you very much for being here, giving us some great insight. Maybe join us in the next couple of months and let us know how this starts to unfold. Pleasure to be here. Terrific. All right, stay with us. Today's Verdict has so much more right after this. All right, welcome back to Today's Verdict. I'm your host and trial attorney, David Lesch. We're here today with Lynn Ellsworth from the Alliance for a Human Scale City. Lynn, thanks for being here today.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me.
I'm glad you're here because, I live in the city and I do see a lot of these restaurants with the outdoor dining. And, yes, sometimes I enjoy eating outdoors, but many times they're an eyesore. There's trash piled up next to the restaurants. You lose your parking spaces. I wonder to myself, when is this going to end? When are these restaurants going to be just indoor dining establishments? So I'm glad you're here because I'd like to talk about it. Tell me what your thoughts are initially about when we first gave them the right to use outdoor dining. Were you pro, for something else?
Yeah, well, I live in Manhattan and there's lots of restaurants and sheds in my neighborhood. And when they first did it, it felt okay. Like, we all thought the restaurants were suffering, and it was announced as a temporary measure. And a lot of people thought some of the sheds were kind of ugly, put up with no care. But it was like, okay, don't worry about it. We're helping out these people, and we need it. And then people started realizing that, wait a minute, this is permanent? What? Wait, it can't be permanent. They can't be serious, right? And then it turns out they were serious. And I think from the human scale network point of view is that the roadways are part of our public, and they belong to all of us. And so do the sidewalks. And we have to find ways to share them. And before, down here in Lower Manhattan, before COVID, there have been all kinds of talk in our neighborhood about, DOT will plan with you, and you can put bike racks here, and then you can close off a street for a play street here, and you could have like a tent in the street over there, the one in the street that isn't a cross street where nobody uses that anymore, because there's lots of little one ways around down here. And we all wanted that. We were really excited by that. There's 4 preschools at the corner of Erickson Place and Hudson Street, which is like a little tiny one-way street, cobblestone. The police are there at the other corner on Varick, the precinct 1. And we approached the precinct and said, hey, you guys, there's 250 of your cars here parked on the sidewalk, like into the Holland Tunnel stuff, under the trees, like you're not just on the street. How about we share Erickson Place, and half of it, we're going to have no parking. We're going to close it off so that the kids have the runaround space. And there's like 4 big plane trees right there. It was really nice. The cops were like, no way, never going to happen. We're never giving up our commuter space. They're kind of very hostile about it, actually. Even our council member at the time was, no, I'm not taking on the cops. This is, they park there. We're not touching that. But, there's a conflict with the use of a roadway between 4 preschools right there and commuters parking all over the sidewalks there. And we don't have a system to plan the use of that space and to advocate, well, hey, let's use it for something else. We wanted to move our farmers market, which is kind of crammed on the sidewalk on Greenwich Street, back to its historical location on Duane Park, which is like a 1-block, one-way place with lots of roadway asphalt. And we thought, well, let's move the farmers market back here on the street where it used to be. Well, we can't do that because, DOT, there's no process, there's no method. So we had high hopes that DOT was opening up to that idea. And then COVID hit. And all of a sudden, we can't do that anymore. The roadways are for cars or restaurants. That's it.
So what do you hope to accomplish with this rally? Tell me about it.
I think the rally was to draw attention to the media that this has been happening outside of the public eye. The restaurant lobby used to be an external lobby to the city, like most lobby firms, and they got brought into city government as an official part of city government. The nightclub industry is now there, and they're the ones negotiating this. And we don't have the standard land use review process for this, like let's have an environmental impact statement like we do when we consider land. So I think the demand to ask that there be a public process, have community boards be involved, have environmental impact to see what has to be done. And I think my larger question is, like, really, even if we're going to do this their way, We don't have a way to regulate this properly. DOT is the wrong agency to regulate this. DOT has one strength.
And why? Well, why is that? Are there just not enough?
DOT's engineering firm. These are engineers who build roads. That's what they can do. That's their Robert Moses inherited strength. They know how to asphalt a street. That's really good. They know how to do that if you need it. They don't know how to regulate things. This is something that requires eyes on the ground. Okay, that shed has deteriorated. There's rats everywhere. The person is a bad actor and not doing. You need people down on the ground. So we need to invent a system to regulate this at the local level. I think community boards would be the best place. I went to our council member at the rally and said, I've been saying this a lot to a lot of people, is that why not experiment, like take one neighborhood in each borough and come up with a local planning process. Like, okay, this street's a play street, this street's for restaurants, this street, we're gonna have just sidewalk cafes. We're gonna figure it out as a community. We're gonna plan a system where the community board regulates it and see how it works.
So you're not against outdoor dining per se.
Oh, no.
You really want to make sure that it's regulated and that the community boards have a say, and it's almost on a restaurant by restaurant basis in many respects, or should I say a community by community basis?
Yeah, and that other uses of the roadway and sidewalk be brought into play. Like, we don't have push carts anymore, but why can't, like, the clothing store next to the restaurant put out a push cart on the roadway on Saturdays or something? Like, why can't everybody be part of this? Why is it only the restaurant industry?
Right, that makes sense. So what are your thoughts? Is this going to happen, or where do you see yourself in a year from now?
Well, my feeling is that the only thing that's going to turn this around is a lawsuit. So I'm 100 in behind the queue up lawsuit on this stuff, because I don't see this administration listening to, I call ourselves, we're the people with a better idea. We're not NIMBYs, we're people with a better idea. So, hey, listen to our cool ideas. And we can't get them to listen. So we count on the media to try to get it out there. And I think when they don't listen, we have to go to court and make it.
All right. Well, we'd like to see where this ends up. We're very interested in today's verdict. So maybe you can come back in a couple of months and give us a little bit of an update.
Sure. Thanks for talking to me about it.
Stay with us. Today's verdict will be right back right after this. All right, that's all we have for today. I'd like to thank our guests for joining us, and of course you, the viewers, for watching. If you have a interesting topic that you would like to see on a future edition of Today's Verdict, feel free to send me an email at davidlesch@bronxnet.org. Until the next time, I'll see you in 2 weeks. Remember, know your issues, reach a verdict. See you soon.